Yes.
Oh, whoa. Is that the Yes Man?
Yeah.
Oh, Yes Man. It's so good to see you. Yes Man, did you watch the Doctor Strange movie?
Yeah.
Did you like it?
Yeah.
Would you like to say hello to the person who wrote it?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Say hello. He's right here. This is your big chance.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
All right, good stuff. Hey, everybody, great show.
golly gee, that was a fun one. That was a fun show.
That was a good time, man. That bio cow, he's just cranking them out, these quizzes these days.
Yeah.
I guess it doesn't. I just found out today that a number of our podcasts are now available on Spotify. That includes
shit.
Night Attack, Cord Killers, all the various Cord Killers options with and without spoiling time, and the Bizarre Briefing are currently on Spotify. I think we have to do some work on Weird Things to get it in there. And then Justin, I can send you the link. It is very quick and painless to put yourself on Spotify now.
Oh shit. Oh no, I'll totally do that. That's awesome.
So check us out on Spotify with those podcasts and more soon.
Speaking of
Pretty
episodes,
quick and painless if your name isn't Alex Jones.
Oh shit!
Man, that was a great title last week. The Equine Clam Party. That was a good name. Well, we're gonna have to do an equally good name. What do we got on the docket, sir?
All right, here are some of our show titles, including Simply Having a Wonderful Cargill Time. Do Derby Girls Have Shticks?
That was an actual question asked.
That was a quote. Farting and Giggling is not this episode specific. Christian Edging is not bad.
That's pretty good.
Bonnie Elf.
Christian Edging was a jury title though, so
really?
I would say
right.
stay away.
Okay. Tuck that shtick, drop some V's, but I know
you
where it's
touched
warm.
the elf.
God would have done better than that. No promises.
God would have done better.
Wink comedy, wink podcast, wink.
Flex McGillicuddy.
I'm a derby girl in a derby world. A very underrated call reference Justin made.
Thank you.
She goes both ways. Flappy Bird. It's a wonderful email. I'm game if you got game.
Children make your smile wider. That one's different when you know what it's a reference to.
That was pretty good. Let's see. Straight from the anals. Doper some V's. Maybe we want to misspell that one.
V for vaginas. Flappy queef.
You guys are baby. It's cold outside. Brian, it's cold outside. Justin gets conned into reading someone's fan fiction. Baby, it's edging inside. Okay, it's a little different. Reading Nietzsche. Let's go back to the top.
Simply backpedaling out of that conversation.
Yeah, I actually I'm always a fan of the plainer titles, but Simply Having a Wonderful Cargill Time.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, that works.
Awesome.
Hey, by the way, so Scuba Faith wrote in that email, and then I'm doing my call-in show on Friday, and I get a call from somebody that has never called in before.
Oh, nice.
Turns out it's Scuba Faith's wife, who was not aware what was in that email. She was just told by her husband to call into the show. She's also a fan. So she called into the show, having not known what her husband wrote. So you can download that. That is an episode. I cut out just that call. That is in the jury feed. You can go hear her call in. Spoiler alert, by the end of it, I'm like, I feel like I was like a non-consenting party to
that
heightening
gotcha.
of their sex life.
Oh, wow.
You were part of their play.
That's the story.
I
of
feel
my
like
life.
there was podcast play that was in motion.
I think that's a very legitimate question. All right, I'm going to go write an email.
Doggone it. I don't know if this is out of bounds, and if it's out of bounds, then feel free to tell me, Bryce. But you are so good at selling when something is transgressive. It's like you know that we need to sell that a line is being crossed, right? And it's so good. And I'm trying to think of a phrase for it. And forgive me, I like. Part of me wants to sponsor and buy some pearls for you to clutch. So, like, just keep them on the desk. So in those moments, you can clutch some pearls.
You're right. I don't know how to feel about that.
I don't know either, but
Could we not get him like a sphincter to tighten?
he ratchets like
Because I would have thought it might have been one of them, those like snap fans. Like, they're just like,
oh, Lordy.
catching the vapors.
I'm Justin Robert Young, I do declare.
Well, can you boys please stop talking about horse pussy?
Listen, when my mother, Ivy Drip, told me that America was going to be a place of sassafras, I did not expect this about. It is just the ad dragon we're doing.
Basically. Well, shit, man. This is that was a really, really fun show. People have been asking your opinion on the Venom movie, Cargill. Do you have an opinion on the Venom movie?
I don't. I haven't seen it yet. It was one of those things that everybody reacted to in a way that they're like, oh my God, it's terrible. You have to see it. And so I was never right in the headspace to go see something ironically at that time. And so I was like, you know what? I'll wait till that comes out on VOD. And that'll be a midnight movie that me and my wife watch after 2 or 3 whiskeys. And we'll go ahead and see if we can have a good time with it. But I have not seen it yet.
I think if you go in with that attitude, you'll have a really good time. But Meryl Barr in the chat brings up a really good question. Follow up from the last time Cargill was on. Did Brian ever read Columbine? And did Cargill ever read Conspiracy? I failed on my part of the bargain. In fact, I'm going to buy it right now. Columbine, what was it again?
What do you think, Columbine?
Well, no. I mean, is it just an accurate retelling of that horrific chapter in American history?
I think he was saying that it was like a deeper dive that reveals a lot of things that probably got lost in the shuffle.
This is the one.
A lot of things that were concealed from the American people for a long time, and by the time they came out, nobody was caring and paying attention.
This is the one written by Dave Cullen.
Yeah, yes. Dave Cullen really spent a lot of time digging in, spent about 10 years digging through the detritus of that event, and creates a startling picture that contradicts the narrative you think you know.
All right, I'm buying it right now, so I have no excuses.
Did you ever read Conspiracy, Cargill?
I did not. I have been swamped. Apparently, people like me working for them, and so I've been working nonstop for the last 6 months. It's why I haven't been able to really call in. You know, I'm a big fan of calling in on Tuesday nights, so when I got the call last night, I'm like, oh, I'm just coming off of vacation. This is the perfect time. I have, I'm not working tonight, so let me pop in on the show. But yeah, no, I've been listening to or reading a lot of stuff for work, and have not. The only things I've read for pleasure are things like my friends' books to blurb them. It's like, oh shit, yes, of course I'd love to read Chuck Wendig's new book. That's awesome. So I haven't really had any time to go, hey, I'm not reading anything. What should I pick up and listen to or read?
Well, so in that vein, of the two of you, I mean, certainly I hope you get around to reading Conspiracy, but it's Justin who I think would love it beyond words. Did you ever read it? Did we talk about it?
No. I've been like anytime that I want to listen to anything or read anything myself, I've just been like, well, no, I should read another book about
the 1960s
either
elections?
Richard Nixon or fucking John F. Kennedy or Joe Kennedy about the 1960 election, which now I'm finally getting to writing and recording that, which is nice that I can actually switch to a phase of creating a thing as opposed to just like endlessly researching and asking yourself, don't you already know enough about this? And then you're like, you read something that you didn't know before and you're like, fuck, god damn it. This is why I have to keep reading things.
If I could cut in for a second, Spider-Bite Zero pointed out that what I was saying was a humble brag, and I don't think they've ever seen me on the show before. There's nothing really humble about me.
Yeah, it's called a brag, a Cargill, as we are shortening it.
It's a full-on brag.
He knows exactly how much he's stunting on your broke ass, and he's very happy to do it. No, look, come on. Brian's known Cargill for forever, and at this point I've known Cargill for a long enough time that we don't even blink when he just goes first name on I pitched Kevin that I should write the Captain Marvel movie.
Fuck, I tried so hard not to name
You did it like 2 or 3 times in a row.
Didn't even blink. There would have been a time in the past where we would have been like, oh, really? You pitched Kevin, just your friend, Kevin. We have to talk about Kevin.
Oh, Jesus Christ. No, you're 100% correct. I was at name drop, so like, no, I didn't do that today. I was very mindful to avoid the name, and no, I fucking totally did it. Shit.
I mean, look, that's fine. We all have our foibles. I, for example, spent the whole show breathing.
Are you getting
Justin was sitting, and you were name dropping, so it was entirely normal across the board.
Well, I'm really happy that I got to do that, and that I did get to talk about Ben's movie a little bit while we were on the show. So,
we love you, man.
I gotta ask, really, are you getting sick? Because in that second half, you were getting sniffly.
Yeah, I don't know if it's an allergy thing or what, but it was like I couldn't stop sneezing.
Yeah,
because
you were fine in the pre-show.
Yeah, I don't think I'm
Is
sick.
Bonnie sick again?
What's that?
Is Bonnie sick?
What was the something pleurisy? What was that title? Oh no! I'm thinking of an extended outtakes from Modern Rogue.
Okay.
My something as pleurisy. Fuck, never mind. Wrong reference, wrong show.
Okay.
I'm a little bit mixed up.
Well, I did get a flu shot, so
good.
hopefully I'm not because I know you are getting the virus when you get the inoculation, but I don't think you're contagious.
No.
I'm dead virus.
Right. Yeah.
I'm certain it's just an allergy thing because it was out of nowhere and a whole bunch, and then it just stopped. Right.
I guess it depends on if you're still feeling what you're still feeling.
I'm feeling joy in my heart. What is that a symptom of?
Lunacy.
It's you're having a wonderful Cargill time.
I'm simply having a wonderful Cargill time. Thank goodness. Oh my God.
We having a wonderful Cargill time.
All right, here. Media King 909 asks, Cargill, congratulations. The Academy comes to you and says, you are our rising star, and we have drawn out of a hat. You pick who hosts the Oscars, and it is your pick is done. There's no negotiation. Twitter shuts down in solidarity, so no one is able to search old tweets. You get to pick whoever you want to host the Oscars. Who hosts the Oscars?
Patton Oswalt.
Oh, that would be fun.
Wow, that actually is like, I feel like that would kind of be a home run.
Yeah, no, I mean you've got somebody who's socially aware, who's redefined the language of the very jokes we're talking about right now.
The only thing you don't get is the song and dance numbers, right? I don't
know. I think Patton could pull that off. Patton is a funny guy. Oh God.
Yeah, he just did one.
Funny guy who I definitely don't know from back in the old AICN days.
No, he just did a song and dance number on Crazy Ex-Girlfriend.
No kidding.
He literally just did one. Yeah.
I stand corrected.
Yeah.
Then.
He hosted the Writers Guild Awards this year. Also, apparently, Stephen King thought Patton Oswalt would be a good pick. When asked, Patton Oswalt said he would have picked Billy Eichner or Tiffany Haddish, which I think are both really good picks.
Yes, but yeah, no. If I got to choose, it would be Patton. I mean, he would be great. He'd be funny. He would say he knows all the right things that need to be said right now. Also, he did what I think is one of the 5 best spoken word pieces of the year with Annihilation. His stand-up performance is fucking great. But yeah, that's someone I would go with. Also, who would be really great. Let me get her name 100% correct. Hannah Gadsby.
I thought you were gonna say that, man. I feel like I think she's great. I love Nanette, but I don't know. I don't know if that is for everybody. I think she's great. She's great, but I don't know if that would be Oscar host. But who knows? What do I know?
No, but that's what I'm saying is, I think it'd be an interesting choice. I mean, we're in a very weird place where, Kevin Hart was not the first person they went to. He was like the 37th person they went to. People don't want to do this because it's a thankless job.
Yeah.
And they tried the celebrity route and that didn't work. The Oscars were very lucky that they had a host who did it for so long that added respectability to it, and they've never found anybody that's been able to pick up the mantle since then and carry it, every year. And so as a result, everyone gets judged super harshly. Every year is the worst ever. So,
Which it is thankless because it's like, hey, look, number one, all TV ratings are declining. So there's that. So you're unlike Billy Crystal, you're going to be on the downswing instead of it's like, oh, people love him doing his crazy medleys. That's why the ratings keep going up. It's like, no, because more people were watching television and more people like to go to the movies. And that's why the ratings were going up. Now they're going down. So you're going to get destroyed as like, oh, Stinker Magoo and his crazy whatevers didn't drive people to the Oscar show. And it's like, there's no way to win at all. And that's before you get into like,
yo, hey, what's up? What's up?
Anything you said on Twitter.
It's me, Stinker Magoo. I just want to say on behalf of me and all the whatevers, it's just such an honor to be here at the Oscars. All right, let's start this party Stinker Magoo style. Am I right?
Here's a quick question, and I honestly don't watch the Oscars very often at all. I'm trying to remember I think the last time I watched it actually all the way through was like 2007.
That sounds about right on my front too.
But has Ellen DeGeneres done it yet?
Yeah, no, she did the big selfie thing where
I know
it was like the most liked thing on Twitter.
She hosted that year.
What?
I know she did the big selfie thing, but did she host that year?
No, she hosted, yeah. And that was like one of those in the middle bits where she was like, I'm Ellen. Look at this. This is the best selfie of all time. Everybody retweet it. And they did until the fucking Nuggets kid came around.
Meryl just dropped a great idea, which I think leads to another great idea, having Deadpool host the Oscars.
Man, that's too partisan, right? I mean, you can't have one of the competitors be the host.
Well,
I mean, not that he's a competitor, but still, like that studio is a competitor. They've got.
Yeah, no, I think that leads to an even better idea, which is Ryan Reynolds. Ryan Reynolds' comedy is perfect he has this very not only self-deprecating but really deflational comedy where he insults everybody, but you totally allow it because Ryan Reynolds is kind of our why am I blanking on his name all of a sudden? The famous insult comic for years.
Triumph.
No, not it's a comic.
Andrew Dice Clay, the Pope.
He was Don Rickles. Yes, Don Rickles. He was
also the Pope.
Ryan Reynolds.
All I can think of.
And everybody's saying Don Rickles, and that is 100% who I was thinking of. But that's who Ryan Reynolds is. He's the guy who, if Ryan Reynolds were on this show right now, roasting all of us, not one of us would feel bad about it.
More like
Absolutely not. You're totally right. Every point that you've made is golden. But all I can think of is the Pope up on the balcony, just fucking doing crowd work with everybody like, hey, look at the lady up front. What's up with the shawl? You're going to a funeral? Oh, what the fuck?
Oh.
Insult comic Pope.
Yeah, no, I feel like what was the name of the comedian that did that shtick from the 70s and 80s? Father Guido Sarducci.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Sarducci becomes Pope. Hello, everybody. I am the Pope. And it's great to be here tonight. Somebody tell me where you're from.
Had you ever seen this bit, Bryce? Are you familiar at all with this?
I've seen the character. I feel like I've seen stills of this character, but I don't think I've ever actually watched a clip of
You should
Father.
Don Novello was hilarious with that character. I loved that character growing up. In fact, me and Scott both have a favorite restaurant in Sedona. We've both been to Sedona separately, and when he was out there staying, I'm like, oh my God, have you been to the coffee? He goes, the coffee pot? I've eaten there 7 days in a row. It's the home of 101 omelets. And you walk into the home of 101 omelets, and right there on the wall is where they have photos of all the celebrities. But right there, first and foremost, as you walk in, is Father Guido Sarducci, who giving his blessing over the coffee pot in Sedona, Arizona, and it made me so fucking happy. But yeah, have you pulled up a clip of Father Guido Sarducci? Because I feel like we need some at this point.
SNL kind of gets a little.
They all smell a little bit copyrighty. All of these clips.
This is the reason I can't even find any on YouTube.
Yeah, no. Sarducci was what? He was the 80s.
He was an
into
advisor
the 90s?
to Trump.
No, 70s and 80s. Like he
70s
was
and
basically
80s.
SNL and then in the middle range. He may have still been doing stuff in the 90s, but it was always like, hey, he's legacy.
Yeah.
Very early. And of course, the thing is he wasn't an SNL character. That was actually his whole stand-up act.
Oh.
And he played.
Yeah, no. This is back when like Yakov Smirnoff is a big thing, but the idea of like
the unknown
character acts.
Like Jury, are you familiar with the Unknown Comic?
Oh, dude,
yeah.
I am. Yeah, from back in the Gong Show days.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, and the fact that he would tour and he would have this opener, and the opener was him. So he would do an opener. He would open for himself as the guy without the bag on his head, go back behind stage, put on a different suit, put a bag over his head, and come out and do a totally different act.
That's great. All right, we got a clip here. Father Guido Sarducci's 5-minute university. I wonder.
Yeah, well, it's only 3 minutes 55.
I think it don't matter where you go to school. Italy, America, Brazil, it's all the same. It's all just memorization. And it don't matter how long you can remember anything, just so you can parrot it back for the test. And I got this idea for a school I would like to start. Something called the 5-minute university. And the idea is that in 5 minutes, you learn what the average college graduate remembers 5 years after he or she's out of school. Would the cost of like $20? That might seem like a lot of money, $20 just for 5 minutes. But that's for like a tuition, cap and gown rental, graduation picture, snacks, everything included. You know, like in college, you have to take a foreign language. Well, at the 5-minute university, you can have your choice. Any language you want, you can take it. Say if you want to take Spanish, what I teach you is, ¿Cómo está usted? That means, how are you? And the answer is, muy bien, means very well. And believe me, if you took 2 years of college Spanish, 5 years after you're out of school, ¿Cómo está usted? Muy bien, about all you're going to remember.
That's
So in
fucking
my
brilliant.
school, that's all
good.
you learn. You see, you don't have to waste your time with the conjugations, vocabulary, all that junk.
The comedy does get a
Forget
real
it anyway,
boost,
what's the
given that he's got all the trappings of authority, right? Like it wouldn't be as funny if he was dressed as a janitor. Maybe as funny if he was dressed as a doctor or a cop or the
Well,
president.
you know, I actually don't. I don't necessarily even think that it's like the gimmick is the gimmick, right? And I think he exhibits it well. And I don't know if it would be the same if he were not him. But part of it is also that like past the 80s, like as soon as like the 80s totally fucking like strip mined the like joke like setup joke. I'm doing a bit kind of like structure. And then the 90s kind of gave way to a lot of the alt comics and the writer comics. And it became more like, you know, when George Carlin went from like a contemporary who was doing comedy to a god. And it's like, okay, now there's all these comics that are like, no, I'm doing one-man shows. I'm doing like either very writing like implements that are not just like that, where it's like, I'm going to start a school and it's going to have this like tiny joke about this, tiny joke about this, tiny joke about this. But man, it's one of those things that I think we can now appreciate for what it was before, because we're so far away from like the stand-up comedy club boom where it was like so many hacks that were out there just totally fucking joke booking it to death.
Dude, it's I'm an evangelist for this, but there's this streaming service that I love that is based on a 80s TV show called Night Flight. And some of you might be familiar with it because it's just shown back up on IFC, where they're taking old footage and putting it in 10-minute blocks on IFC. But this was Friday and Saturday night, 4-hour blocks of entertainment that would then be repeated. So from 10 o'clock at night to 6 a.m. in the morning, you would have Night Flight, and it is fascinating. And essentially it was designed, the idea was it was supposed to bring New York and LA to middle America. It was, hey, look, there are punks and crazy folks and creatives out there that don't fit in a normal society, and you don't have access to Times Square, and you can't just walk in to something at midnight. So we're going to give you a taste of that here, and it would be indie films and music documentaries and short films and crazy stuff. And so the streaming service shows old episodes, and some of those old things is they would have, during the comedy boom, they would have whole blocks of comedy. And it's the only thing I skip over on this. I will sit and watch a fucking 25-minute interview with Crocus. But the minute the comedy comes on, it's like, oh, fuck this. No, because it's exactly what you were talking about, Jerry. It was the hacks. It was, it's set up joke. And it's like, fuck, this is really, really rough stuff. Maybe 1 out of 10 of those comics is hilarious. And some of them ended up doing stuff like they would have like Emo Phillips would show up, or Judy Tenuta would host an entire episode of Night Flight or something like that. But most of the people that were on these comedy bits are people you've never heard from again, and you see why right away. No. Someone was asking if it had to do with Friday Night Videos. Friday Night Videos was the NBC's alternative when they realized how popular Night Flight was. Night Flight, true story, beat MTV to showing music videos on television by 3 months.
Oh, shit.
The first episode aired in 1981, 3 months before MTV started up. So everybody knows Video Killed the Radio Star was the very first music video played on MTV. But the truth is that Night Flight was showing music videos 3 months before that every Friday and Saturday night. So it's a seminal television show. You can find a bunch of clips on YouTube. So if you guys are like me, sitting up with a little whiskey or something, or want to watch something crazy, fall down that rabbit hole of old Night Flight stuff, because there's really great crazy stuff on there. And it's literally that thing when I'm like, I want to watch something as I drift off, but I don't really want to watch a movie or something. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to throw on an episode of Night Flight. And it is always a pleasure.
That seems like the kind of territory where I would desperately love a Sherpa to walk me through a curated list of that. I wouldn't trust myself to just wander around, because I'd be afraid I'd be, watching a bunch of garbage, the wrong stuff, basically, because it's so, heterogeneous that, I don't know.
But I think that's kind of the idea, right? Is that you're falling into a pile of garbage, and you happen like, oh, look, this is $100 bill, or this is a fake $100 bill. Isn't it funny that I looked at it?
Right.
What's interesting is if you watch the whole episodes, like that's the real thing, because the episodes were these curated 4-hour blocks of here's what's cool in 1983. Like, here's what's cutting edge. Like, they'll do one of their favorite things is they do Take Off To. and Take Off to, they would choose a topic and they would just talk about it. And one of my favorites was Take Off to Cult Film, and it was made in like 83 or 84. And they talked about the popular cult films of the time. And they're introducing an entire generation to Eraserhead and Eating Raoul and the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And, the thing is they created the show really for 20-something potheads. But instead, it was 8-year-olds like me sneaking down after my parents had gone to sleep and sitting up for 4 hours watching this unbelievably cool stuff that was just melting my brain and turning me into the guy I am now. So you can actually track down, like I know on several of the other like video services, not necessarily YouTube, but some of the alternatives, you can find entire old episodes. Sit down and watch an old episode of it. It's really good, crazy stuff made by really hip people like almost 40 years ago. And it is pure distilled 80s joy.
Yeah, man, that's actually fucking great. So what is the charge per month?
Oh, like it's like
it's like $5
the last time I bought it was like $30 for the year.
Oh shit! All right.
Yeah, like it's an insta buy. Like it's one of those that it's like if you spend 2 or 3 Friday nights sifting through this when you're looking for something to watch, it's going to pay itself off. But I'll go an entire month or two without watching it, and then I'll just be like, oh, I want to go on a bender. And the thing is they put up new content every Friday night, as was the old model. So every Friday there's something new on Night Flight. And then they've made deals with a lot of cult film streamers and distributors. So there's all sorts of additional stuff like Blue Moon Video and crazy stuff like that. Arrow shares a bunch of its crazy videos, its cult stuff with Night Flight. So
I mean, that's the funny thing. I'll tell you what, if you are a creative, and I know we got a lot of them in the audience, I watch some shit like that and then realize like how much better off you are literally just having a smartphone. Like how much you can create something. If that looks cool, you can literally recreate it with your fucking kitchen lights and an iPhone at this point.
Yes, you can. People keep asking, so I'm going to share with them. They want to know what I've been drinking, and I've been drinking 2 different things. One, I started off with killing off a bottle of this. This is Glenmorangie La Santa. It is, I love Glenmorangie Doublewoods, and this particular Doublewood is done in sherry casks. And then since I enjoyed that for flavor, I have now moved on to Buffalo Trace.
Buffalo Trace is pretty good. Isn't that down in
second bottle?
Oh, there we go. That fucking Costco haul.
Yeah, it's the. Would you like to buy a small bottle for $20 or a bottle 3 times the size for $36? And it's like, yes.
Put it in the bag.
Hey, I'm gonna go fix the AC because it's colder than it should be, and I don't want the kids waking up. So I'll be right back, and then.
All right.
Me and Justin will keep the show going.
We'll figure it out.
We'll do something. Did you ever watch Night Flight growing up, or were you an Up All Night kid?
No, I mean certainly Up All Night was probably more my speed, but that was always that never really held much cultural cachet aside from the fact that it was porn, soft porn with the actual like soft porn edited out. Yeah, that was really all I knew Up All Night for.
Gilbert Gottfried, though, which is kind of amazing.
There was, of course, Gilbert Gottfried. Yeah. But then again, I guess even by that point, I probably knew him more as Iago than to appreciate his comedic skills. I don't know if I ever really fully appreciated how brilliant Gilbert Gottfried was until like The Aristocrats, even that I realized like, oh shit, like he's actually just a fucking like brilliant comic.
Did you watch the documentary?
I've not yet. I heard it's fucking amazing.
Oh, it is. It's Gilbert is fucking amazing. If you've not seen it yet, it's a documentary you need to watch. It's going to make you fall in love. My wife grew up hating Gilbert Gottfried. Anytime I'd mention Gilbert Gottfried or anything with his voice would come up, she would cringe. It would be like nails on a chalkboard. And then she sat there and watched the doc with me at Fantastic Fest, and she walked out going, "God damn it, how I like Gilbert Gottfried." And
So, a lot of you might have heard Brian and I talk about the Harmontown documentary. It's the same director as that.
Oh, really?
that's a really good doc.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and
This
you
was
know
better.
the Harmontown one, I kind of felt like it was missing. It was missing a few months, either like before or after, and it wound up like getting its ending sort of dropped into its lap, which I think kind of saved a bit of a mess of like a very messy guy's messy life at a messy time.
Yeah.
Which I don't think it's anything and any fault of the director, because I think it was an honest doc, which many aren't, like, and refrained from necessarily totally fabricating timelines and stuff to make sure that the narrative worked. And so it wound up kind of being just a little more disorganized. But I think Gilbert Gottfried is somebody that's had such a career and is such a fascinating person that there's no way that even just scratching that surface and finding this very vulnerable guy who, like, you know, not only through like whatever hole in the universe becomes this like beloved children's performer and like in the Aladdin movie and like in as a voice actor, and then becomes like a safe Geico character, and then is like kicked out of that because he's doing the shit that he's done forever, that like he thought you could just live in two worlds, but he's also a very sweet guy. So I'm definitely excited to see it.
Well, Harmontown suffered from the same problem that Conan suffered from, which is they're wonderful docs about a person at a sliver in their career, but they happen right in the middle of the career. Like some of their biggest stuff hasn't actually happened yet. Right. So watching Harmontown is a great doc, but here you're watching Dan Harmon before Rick and Morty.
Right.
Like you're watching it before he becomes the Dan Harmon, the household comic name. He's somebody that the geeks know, that the hardcore comedy people know, but that hasn't become a household name yet. Whereas Gilbert, the brilliance of Gilbert is twofold. One, it is a comedian towards the end of his career, so he does have a much larger thing to go through, but it's got the best hook of this documentary. The hook of this documentary is, who the fuck marries Gilbert Gottfried? And you learn about that, and you learn about what it's like to be someone in love with this cultural person who we could never imagine having as a friend, let alone being married to, and what the fuck is that like? But also finding out that Gilbert is not who you think he is. Well, that there's so much more to him. Like the very fact, one of the things that goes into it and spends a lot of time with is the fact that every day he goes and spends an hour or two with his two sisters, that he takes a bus across town in New York and hangs out with his sisters. And he's been doing so pretty much every day since he was a kid, and, you know, since he was a young man. And then on top of that, he's got some weird fucking quirks that make him even weirder than you thought he was before. And so then it's also a touching documentary. And it has something to say about what we just talked about tonight, about his whole Twitter debacle and making a joke that impacted his career and impacted his livelihood. Because he was the Geico duck until he made a really bad joke about a tsunami.
Affleck.
And, Affleck.
And now they literally just rip him off.
Affleck, yeah.
Now they literally just fucking rip him off. It's so amazing that it's like, oh no, let's just have somebody do a Gilbert Gottfried impression into the mic and have him say.
And then I'll tell you what, that's a Costco move. That's certainly value for your dollar there.
You know,
the fact that they didn't go to Ben for that, like Ben Affleck, you know, I think would have been the great way to kind of zig instead of zag.
Yeah.
This
Sorry,
kind
go
of,
ahead, Bryce.
I'm interested to see this because I had a really good experience with. Oh, I don't remember the name of the documentary series. Do you remember the name of the doc series, Brian, on HBO about Gary
Real
Shandling.
Sex 3. No. The Garry, the Shandling Diaries. I think it was called.
The Judd Apatow,
Yeah,
Garry
yeah,
Shandling.
Correct. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Which is like I had seen some of Gary Shandling's work, right? I had seen some of the Larry Sanders. I had seen the
The
Larry
Zen
Sanders show.
Diaries of Gary Shandling. That's what
it.
it is. Yeah. Thank you, FLS Carnage.
Yeah, thank you. And so that's the sort of thing where it's like, okay, that's a person who I know from like a sliver of their career, right? Like I never knew any of his stand-up or his personality, TV talk show stuff. I didn't even know about the show before the Larry Sanders show. And I feel like
The Garry Shandling Show. This is the Garry Shandling Show.
Gary called me up and asked
he
if
asked
I
me to
would
write
write his theme song. Yeah.
and so I feel like I would have a similar like paradigm on Gilbert Gottfried, right? Is I know him as like a voiceover actor, or a lot of kids stuff, where it, kind of going through the window and seeing a wider breadth of his career would be really nice to see.
Yeah, well, and also a depth to the person. I mean that peek behind the curtain, that real neurosis, like what we always took as a conceit for the character, coming from a very real place, and that comes through in the documentary. Yeah. I thought it was fantastic, and I didn't realize what privileged access Judd Apatow had to his real story, and it lends authority to the lens through which he portrays Garry Shandling. He's able to portray him in a way that I don't think many outsiders would be able to get away with without having some kind of backlash.
Can we just rewind a little bit, because Brian, I think you were out for some of the conversation, but about that Harmontown doc, I feel like now. So Cargill's point was like, all right, like, look, if you could make a documentary about Dan Harmon, now you would probably have to conclude like, hey, guess what? He won. Like, he now has this cartoon franchise that is more significant than anything he's ever done. It's brought him more financial success than he's ever had. And fans of his podcast know that he's probably now in a more mentally healthy place than he's ever been, and physically healthy place than he's ever been, right? And it makes that Harmontown doc, it kind of gives truth to something that I felt while watching it, which is like, man, the guy in that doc doesn't deserve a win. Like, it's almost like it's like he mentions in a very self-destructive place, and they're watching him not write other scripts or do other pilots because he is just wallowing in his self-despair. He has like that one moment of like being a real shithead and like having his mic still on and like looking into the mirror and talking about how he needs to get his life together, but it's like, that's not really a redemptive moment. Like, it's read in the doc as a rock bottom moment that then we get the like, oh, well, he's back on Community thing at the end. But it's like, in the larger timeline, like, that's just like a dark fucking doc about a man who's really at a fucking low point.
Well,
having issues in a relationship that would then crumble shortly thereafter after the doc, and would just be one small section of his life. Like, imagine if they made a doc about you at a time in your life when you were having a serious relation with someone who you did not end up marrying. And then you get married and spend 10, 20, 30 years married to somebody, or the rest of your life married to somebody. And there's this doc out there about you that was about your relationship with somebody that you might remember their parents' names, that within years you start forgetting their last name. That kind of a thing is really, it's interesting, but it's also, it's such a weird concept.
Well, everything both of you guys said was addressed in, there was a Harmontown episode where Dan Harmon talked to the director, and everything both of you have said is brought up by either Dan Harmon or the director, and what they very overtly said was the realization to fix all of that is that at some point in the middle of, whether it was editing or filmmaking, they realized, oh, no, wait. It's called Harmontown, the film, but the hero is Spencer. It's Spencer's story, and Spencer is the one who experiences a an ascendant, going
Oh,
from
sure,
a nobody
sure.
to. I mean, he's the hero. So
Yeah, I mean, 100%, right? But
That's
the
the
movie
same thing
doesn't
with
start
Conan.
off with the movie doesn't start off with celebrity interviews about Spencer, right? Like, so Spencer will always, even in a doc that was about the career of Dan Harmon, Spencer can be your character that brings you in, that you bind yourself to, because he is you are both going on a journey of being around Dan Harmon, right? I just think, and this is not a criticism of the doc, right? I think
No.
it's just
Because as I was saying, it's the same thing with Conan. When you watch the thing about Conan O'Brien called Conan, it's a film about Conan O'Brien, but really the hero of that doc is his assistant, who has to put up with him during, again, this tour while he's been fired before he's been rehired by somebody else. These two docs back to back, they're the same fucking doc about two very successful assholes who are incredibly talented.
I guess
if anything, I think the doc suffers, if anything else, from just being too honest, because they could always, like many docs, lie about like what actually happened so they can fit things together so they can make a good story. And I think that doc doesn't take fairly easy paths to do that, to make it to either make Dan Harmon a more sympathetic figure who deserves salvation, or just go full bore and say like, hey, look, there's no redemption. He's just you're watching a man slowly march to suicide.
No, so along that line, I guess it's interesting. I don't know if I was primed the right way going into it or what, but I kind of never regarded Dan Harmon as even a character in that documentary so much as a force of nature. Like, if the star of the show is the hurricane that destroys this family's house, we don't say, well, I don't know about the character development of this hurricane.
I mean, it is called Twister, Brian.
Yeah. Well, I mean, kind of that's exactly the thought that popped into my mind as well. So maybe I just went in in a different mindset than you guys, but it never occurred to me to really regard him as a character so much as just the thing happening to all of the other characters in the story.
Yeah, he's an interesting dude. Like everything I'd heard about him beforehand from people who worked with him lined up with that documentary. And then seeing him after the fact and having my own 2 encounters with him. I've met Dan Harmon twice in my life. Once was we met in a bar of all things. Because
now I've heard everything.
If there's if there's one thing that Dan Harmon and Cargill have in common, it's drinking. And so running into a bar, and then I introduced myself to him. I said, "Hey, we have a friend in common. Yada yada. How you doing? Nice to meet you." It was at Comic-Con, and within half an hour, he's beschnonkered. He's got a friend with him who's come to meet him, who's spanking him while Harmon's got a tea light on his head, and he's going, Comic-Con! Comic-Con! And I'm like, oh my God, this is everything I've ever heard about this man. And then the second time was he was sat next to me at the Doctor Strange premiere because he had been hired for 2 weeks to do some rewriting.
Oh, that's interesting. I've never heard this story. Who else was there?
Perhaps a young gentleman named Jason Murphy.
That's the friend that they have in common.
Oh.
Hey.
No, it's not. Would you like a name drop at this point?
I mean, he was making a joke about your name drops, but sure, if you want to do it for real, we can do that too.
I was actually trying to twist Brian because
star of Rogue something or other, Jason Murphy, and. No. Scott Derrickson, one of his closest friends is Joel Mchale, and he introduced me to Joel Mchale like 10 years ago. And so, what Joel had told me about this new show he's doing, Community. So I instantly checked that out. And over the years, I've heard so many stories from him and then many of the other people that I've met over the years. who have worked with Dan, all have crazy stories, and they're all stories that line up with that doc. And oddly enough, everything I know about Dan Harmon watching that doc actually did pull punches. There's whole other segments that I've heard that I can't confirm, but that I've heard that are like, oh, well, that also makes sense.
Just
so
that
there
there were aspects that were unpalatable even in a uncharitable documentary about him.
Yes, and that maybe talking about that aspect of his life would make him completely unsympathetic. Those kinds of things. But yeah, he's an interesting cat, and that's an interesting doc. But again, it's both. I think it suffers from the fact that it's just too early in his career. I think. But first of all, Dan Harmon's going to go down as one of the geniuses of this era. That he's somebody that when you watch that documentary, you're like, you've been given all these chances and you fuck over so many of them, and it doesn't really matter because the stuff he's going to churn out is going to inspire so many other people. That's going to be, we're going to watch Community 10 years from now and still fucking laugh at it. Same with Rick and Morty and whatever the next thing is, because he's just so fucking talented. But he's also got demons. And got demons that one day someone will make a full-on documentary that will make Harmontown look like a very nice, kind, small sliver of his life. And yes, somebody asked Seattle's own Joel McHale. That is correct. For those of us that are fans of Almost Live, we raise a glass to Seattle. Wait, are you an Almost Live fan?
No, I have no idea what Almost Live is.
Almost Live is started as a cable access show in Seattle, then spread out on cable and where I saw it, and for like 2-3 years was a cable comedy show, and had a bunch of Seattle comedians. The most notable, a scientist turned comedian named Bill Nye.
Oh, Jesus.
Bill Nye, when he left, he took a couple of people with him, a couple of writers and a couple of performers, and he went off to make a PBS show called Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Oh,
and
wow. I would have thought he'd be like studying in a lab.
You would think, but no, stand up. Yeah, no, this is. I grew up on this. When Bill Nye the Science Guy happened, I'm like, oh God, it's the guy from Almost Live. This is amazing. And so after cable got over it, Seattle still supported Almost Live. It stayed on, and they brought on this young, talented, college graduate who had played football, and football didn't work out, and he tried comedy, and that was Joel McHale. And Joel McHale then blew up after that and came out to LA to make his fortune, and he ended up running into a young Scott Derrickson, and they became very good friends and became close friends over the years. Those of you who have read the news recently, Scott's house burned down in the fires, and he went and Joel put him up. Joel put him and his family up, so he stayed with him for a few weeks.
Oh, holy shit! I didn't read that Scott Derrickson's house burned down in the fire.
Oh yeah, no, he lost everything. It was
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, no, his wife loaded up enough into the car that they saved some things, but yeah, they lost they lost their house, and it was weird. I had just stayed with him like 3 weeks before, and it was a gorgeous house in a wonderful neighborhood, and I was like, oh my God, dude, you got it. He goes, yeah, we've stopped buying art because this is our forever home, and then the fire came and just took it all, and now we brought everybody down.
Wow, holy shit, man.
I can't find it, Justin.
Shit takes some turns, like fucking.
You guys need some whiskey, because this is some story time. Yeah.
Who's your favorite, Brian? Who's your favorite '80s comedian?
Shit, man. Liked Stephen Wright, certainly liked. I think a lot of George Carlin went over my head at the time. Do you know what was astonishingly funny was, I think it only lasts like 6 episodes, but Matt Frewer, who you probably know better as Max Headroom, had a show called Dr. Doctor, and it wasn't even necessarily like he was telling jokes, but just his situational awareness. I mean, I remember laughing until I was bent over crying. His timing and he was great. He was great.
There is an awesome book, and this is more about 70s comics than 80s comics, but it's about, and it's one of the two, and I'm probably going to get it wrong, a comic strike at the Laugh Factory in L.A. That is awesome. It is a great nonfiction book, and it has so many, like, just amazing names in it, including an early personality rift between Jay Leno and David Letterman, young Jay Leno's and David Letterman's, but like Sam Kinison and even Mark Maron, like a very young Mark Maron is a fairly central character in it, but very well worth reading. I would say though to the 80s thing, you know who fucking killed me? Although he really came into fruition more in the early 90s, but Richard Jeni. I don't know if anybody remembers Richard.
Oh, yeah. No. True story. God, this is 10 years ago now. I had gone and done a big favor for my family. You know, it was the first time my father treated me as an adult. And he's driving me to the airport, and I told him, you know, I was really disappointed that, I know you're really disappointed in me that I didn't join the military and follow in your footsteps. And he goes, you know, no, I'm really not. You know, some people are 9-to-5 people, and you were never going to be a 9-to-5 person. But if I'm disappointed in anything, it's that you never became a stand-up comedian. And I was like, wait, what? And he goes, yeah, you were always so funny, and you were always watching stand-up comedy. Why do you think we took you to all those stand-up comedy shows when you were a teenager? And it was the first time in my life I realized I was 15 years old and going to stand-up comedy, like in 2-drink minimum clubs.
Yeah.
My parents were taking me to see this stuff. So I saw Richard Jeni live.
Wow.
When I was a kid, I saw so many stand-up comics live because my parents thought they were raising a young stand-up comedian. And sadly, I went on to become a fucking novelist and screenwriter. So they're so
shit, Dad.
But no. So I've seen, Richard Jeni was incredibly funny. No, I'm obsessed with stand-up comedy. It's that thing that I love that I don't think I'm capable of doing. And Richard Jeni was great. Someone earlier said Emo Phillips was active in the 80s, and it's like not only was he active in the 80s, he was married to Judy Tenuta, which is something that's always fascinated me because what was that household fucking like? What was the Emo Phillips Judy Tenuta household like? Because that had to be fucking crazy.
I mean, although almost universally, stand-up comedians are fucked up people. Like like more so than even musicians. Like you can meet a musician and be like, oh, okay, well look, I put on crazy paint and I do a dance and then a backflip after my guitar solo. But then, you know, it's kind of like a job and then I go home. Stand-up comedians almost universally are fairly dark human beings. Like there's something about subverting your ego enough to go up on stage and command a crowd with something as vulnerable as comedy that I think just like warps a mind. Like there's just something about it that like you're just living in this dark realm for too long and your soul erodes or something. There's like it's a weird thing.
Yeah, no, it's every single stand-up comedian I know, and I know a handful, are all super dark people, and their lives are far darker than you would imagine. Like, and they all have really complicated relationships with their loved ones. And I don't really know a well-adjusted comedian who's pure comedian. You know, I know some people that do some stand-up or some public performance, but they're also novelists and screenwriters or whatever. You know, every pure comedian I know has something dark. In fact, the most well-adjusted person I know who's still not huge, you know, was not hugely well-adjusted was Patton Oswalt. And then, of course, Patton
Yeah,
fucking
the
has a guy next to him in bed. Like,
Yeah.
and you can only imagine what, I mean, me and my wife have talked about that several times. Like, what would it be like if I woke up one morning and you were there and I tried to wake you up and
that was it. That was a wrap.
like you just had a bad reaction and that's it. You're gone. Like it's like he went to a dark place and he's like somebody said he's still depressed, but he's mostly pulled himself out of it from what I can tell. But it's
Well, but look, he was somebody that even before the darkness found him was talking about dealing with depression. Like,
Yeah.
you know, but the difference is that, you know, even if you look at somebody complicated like Louis C.K., who was kind of famed for his honesty, like Louis C.K. breaks out as a stand-up comic because he was doing like insult comedy about his kids, right? Like it was this like kind of crazy, refreshing, like, oh my God, yes, when you won't tie your shoes because we're all late for the restaurant and you're an asshole. Brilliant writing, amazing performance, but the thing that we hold against him now, as he is a disgraced person in public, is that he's not applying that honesty to what we understand about his own sins. Whereas like Patton Oswalt, even before his wife died, was doing comedy about being a depressed person and what it's like to get on medication and what it's like to be off medication and like bringing the comedy of that.
People to watch him jerk off, which is, you know.
Well, sure, yeah, and look, I think that there's again there is what we understand to be the darkness in some people's lives, and let's magnify that for stand-up comedians. And then there's kind of like where we feel betrayed, even beyond, you know, what they are offering. Like that we feel like I know as a fan of Louis C.K. who now understands him to be a total piece of shit, there's still a part of me that's like, no, do the Louis C.K. bit about Louis C.K. Like, if you saw you, do the thing that you would say if you saw you. And he won't. And then that's why it's like, if he had gone to the Comedy Cellar and had done a fucking routine where he just fucking totally deconstructed his life and where he was coming from and was just like, whatever, this is like, I'm burning my own life and career down in front of you the way I've burned my life and career down before and made myself famous. I think it'd be different than him coming back and being like, hey, anyway, what's up with stoplights?
Yeah, no, I you know, had he come out and he goes, maybe, just maybe, people should be forgiving and understand that once you've said you're sorry about something that maybe you can become a better person. But maybe you shouldn't be jerking off in front of your coworkers.
Yeah.
Like, had he opened the bit with that and then gone so self-destructive and destroyed his image and took down everything he did wrong and took it from that point of view and gave Louis C.K.'s version of Louis C.K., yeah, no, maybe we wouldn't be so angry with him showing back up. But that's not what he fucking did.
No, but that's kind of the issue, is that stand-up comedy is a weird thing, man. It plugs into this primitive part of your brain that, like, either you are going to connect on that vibration or you're not. And there's a reason why the greats, who were included, Louis C.K. was in that George Carlin vein where he was like obsessive about doing a brand new hour every fucking year. And it's like when you do that and it's performative, and he was even like changing how you distribute shit, so he was like important on another level. It's like, man, that's a lot. Like you're connecting on this kind of primal level that if you violate it, man, he's fucked forever. Like there's no coming back from that.
God, what's his name from Seinfeld? Michael
Richards.
Michael Richards. Yeah, he's Michael Richards done. Like the thing.
But Michael Richards sucked. Not sucked. He was not the comedian that fucking Louis
His
C.K.
stand-up
was.
did not scale the way his presence as Kramer or even his character in UHF did.
Yeah,
like nobody.
The thing is what happened to him is he's done. Like Michael Richards has tried several times to come back, and nobody's gonna have it. And I've talked to people who have run into him or know him in some way, shape, or form, and he's the saddest man in Hollywood. He's got this crazy Seinfeld money. Like, we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars that he's made off the residuals of Seinfeld, and he lives in this huge mansion that nobody ever comes to. That he's just alone because nobody wants to be a friend of Michael Richards, the guy who shouted the N-word on stage and didn't have a bit to go with it. It was, and Louis C.K. is now that guy who, the best defense I've ever heard of Louis C.K. was Sarah Silverman, who said, yeah, he said, do you want to watch me jerk off? And I was like, fuck yeah, I do. And we did. Like, that's the best defense anyone's ever given.
I mean, although I also think morally the biggest problem with Louis C.K. is that his agent buried so many people to cover his trail. And
is that there's a trail of bodies where it's like, hey, man, if you're going to cross us, we're going to make real trouble for you.
I mean, his agent was the biggest agent in comedy, which programs all of Comedy Central, programs all of HBO, all of Showtime, like all of any of you see people at Netflix now, like he was that dude, and Louis C.K. was the prize client. So it's like, oh, you jerked off in front of a couple 19-year-olds at the Just for Laughs festival. Well, unless you guys are going to say that you're super cool with it, shit, you complain to the organizers. Well, I guess you don't have a career anymore because you can't get famous and talk about fucking how big of a piece of shit he is. So that was it. And that to me is morally kind of the sin beyond the sin, that it's like, well, we don't know what would have happened. Maybe they were.
The cherry on top is that he made a movie about it excusing himself.
What? I Love You, Daddy?
Yeah.
I Love You, Daddy is a weird movie.
That's an understatement, my friend.
It's an odd movie. Well, because also it's an odd movie because it's his hit piece. It's on Woody Allen, right?
But also then excusing Woody Allen at the end and being like, well, maybe this isn't so bad.
Well, yeah. So spoiler alert for fucking I Love You, Daddy. The movie ends with Chloe Moretz Grace, or Grace Moretz, I forget which way it goes, deciding that she's this brat daughter of Louis C.K., the absent father and creative genius, because, of course, you can't make a movie playing homage to Woody Allen unless you're going to make yourself the fucking creative genius. But she decides she's going to fuck this Woody Allen stand-in played by John Malkovich. And then John Malkovich is like, no, I don't want to fuck you. So it's like, he doesn't even do, like, the Woody Allen stand-in is this total lech creep the entire fucking movie. And then he's like, kind of says like, no, I don't want to do this, which is like, no, but you know that Woody Allen's a creep. You know this. That's why you made a movie about it. But you want to redeem him. You want to leave him this like little wiggle room that, but maybe he doesn't. And maybe this daughter is just kind of an awful person at 16. Like, that's the moral of the story, is that sometimes 16-year-old girls or 18-year-old girls want to fuck 60-year-old men. And then the men are distant at the right moment at the very end of the movie. And then everybody gets along. It's a weird flick.
Yeah. Somebody made an interesting point in chat that Bill Hicks would have fallen, still alive, would have fallen through the rabbit hole. That's an interest.
Meaning what? Like he would have gotten in trouble for something or fallen off the radar or what?
No, the interesting thing about Bill Hicks is that Hicks was a really good comedian, but he was somebody that the mainstream just never connected with, and that other comedians were occasionally bothered by because of his habit of doing an interesting show, a really funny show, and then he would go to the point where he would totally lose all the audience, and then he would win the audience back. That was his shtick. But he would always cross a line where he offended you. But all three of his best albums, the bits that we know best of Bill Hicks, his stage show, all happened after he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and he knew he had no choice of living.
He had
chance
no
of living.
fucks to give.
And he had no fucks to give. And the Bill Hicks, who had no fucks to give, was the funniest fucking comedian of his era. Like, he just demolished. He did more great content in the last 6 months of his life than most comedians do in their entire lives. But it also had to do with the fact that he didn't have to live with his decisions and his choices. And he knew it. And he fucking used that to his advantage. So that's a really strong point. That had Bill Hicks today might be this unknown comedian that maybe a few people knew and said, hey, have you ever listened to Bill Hicks' 90s stuff? It was really kind of funny. But he would have never done Rant in E minor. Like, Rant in E minor would have never fucking happened if he didn't have pancreatic cancer.
Yeah. I mean, what if he had like a false diagnosis and then he would like lived? I think like Bill Hicks is somebody that, yeah, you're right. Like, that material is the material that defines him. But man, I mean, if he persists to be a legend for those who care, which is amazing considering he came before the era where his kind of shit could go mainstream.
Well, yeah, but I'm convinced that when he died, God split his soul in two and said, you know what, this was too pure to be available in one person. And he took part of it, he took all the really super funny, geeky stuff, and he put that in Patton Oswalt. And then he took all the offensive goat boy stuff, and he put that in Doug Stanhope. And then sent those two geniuses off into the world to suddenly do their own takes on, because Doug Stanhope is totally all the bitter, angry stuff of Hicks, and Patton is all the great, joyous, wonderful love stuff of Bill Hicks. Like, you know, Patton would have never done the Jimi Hendrix chainsaw dick fucking Debbie Gibson. Like, that's never a shtick Patton would do, but Doug Stanhope would do it in a heartbeat.
Sure. Yeah, no. I mean, that's actually a really, really good cleaving of someone. Although, like, part of it is that he just didn't, like, he had these, like, that brilliant flash, and then it was a wrap, right? Like, and then it's like, oh shit, you know, I was listening to a sports podcast that was talking about how, like, people jumping over other people is up in the NFL this year. You didn't see it a lot. It was something that maybe happened like once every 3 years. And then this year, for whatever reason, everybody's literally leaping over other human beings. And part of it is athletics, but other parts of it are, hey, you just saw somebody do it. And you just realize how much of life is like, oh shit, I didn't know you could do that. Yeah, well, fuck, I'm going to do that. That's fucking great. Yeah, as long as I know it's possible. Like, now I have a guide that I can work from. I can kind of see how they did it. And that's like, Bill Hicks is just one of those where you look at it and you're like, oh, that's stand-up comedy. I can just be corrosive and incisive and offensive and like blasphemous to like the social contract that we all live by, and people will love me for it. In a world that praises kind of conform, and specifically where he came out of, where we're talking about that era of literally like hacks a million, just fucking out an entire industry of comedy clubs. He's like, no, I'm going to tell literally unvarnished truth.
The thing that kills me is that I was going to comedy clubs in the era of Bill Hicks, and I never saw Bill Hicks live, but I saw Pauly Shore live. And, like, do you know how that hurts my soul, that is a truth that I carry with me? I've seen Pauly Shore do stand-up, and I never got to see Bill Hicks do it live. It kills me.
Yeah, no, I Bill Hicks was somebody that was definitely before when I had my eye on the ball, but I mean, catching up with it as an adult, I'm just like, wow, like still ahead of his time. Like there's shit that he does now that would be like, I mean, God, can you imagine? There are a few comedians where it's like, this is such a weird era, and God, I would love to hear Bill Hicks talk about Me Too, or I would love to hear, someone like Patrice O'Neill talk about, gender and race relations. Like now, there's like so many fucking incisive minds that like I think would just feast on an era like this in a way that somebody who grew up in it kind of can't, because like you're already invested.
Did you guys already chime in on the whole, and maybe it's old news or whatever, but the whole concept of Dennis Leary stealing all of Bill Hicks everything?
Hey, we
that's a
Skype
rhetorical
crashed, so-
question that I like to ask. Cardboard
What's that?
cutouts representing Justin and Cargill.
Brian was starting to ask a question. The second Skype crash. So Brian, if you want.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I was gonna ask, like, did you guys already peek in on the controversy of whether Dennis Leary stole his entire career from the corpse of Bill Hicks?
Oh, no, that makes sense though. I mean, I'm not super up on.
Oh yeah,
on
no. That's one of those things where I guess everybody's just. I don't want to ascribe meaning to everybody, but like 10 years ago is the kind of thing that everybody was, deconstructing. Like, look at how note for note, bit for bit, this is ripped off from this is ripped off from that. You know, and the weird part is the utilitarian in me kind of says, well, okay, when Ronald McDonald dies, is there a place for Bonald McBonald? I mean, do we like that flavor? Do we want more of that? The original's gone, but what if we can approximate something close to it?
Well, and it's funny because from Magic and stand up were the same thing for a while. Like they played the same clubs, they were looked at in the same way, and then kind of stand up evolved into this other thing, and Magic evolved in a different way. But Magic is a far more kind of utilitarian, like, oh, okay, well, wait, did this guy die? Like, okay, so who's doing his cups and balls? Can I talk to the widow and see whether or not she's gonna give me the blessing so I can not get banned from my local Magic circle for doing this cups and balls routine?
It sounds like everything about this analogy is accurate except for the part where he talks to the widow.
I mean, sure. Yeah, exactly. I mean, like that would be the most ethical version, right?
Here's the problem with this entire conversation is, as somebody who was watching this stuff at the time, this is something we talked about in the 90s. Dennis Leary was doing that bit while he was still alive. Bill Hicks was not dead when No Cure for Cancer came out, and No Cure for Cancer is so clearly Bill Hicks material that those of us of the MTV generation who didn't know who Bill Hicks was yet thought Dennis Leary was great and amazing. And then once we discovered Bill Hicks, it was like, wow, all of this stuff really is borrowed. And then once Bill Hicks dies, all of a sudden Dennis Leary doesn't have any good stand-up anymore. And that's kind of the smoking gun before Dennis Leary goes on to become an actor instead of a stand-up comedian.
I don't know. I mean, and granted, I am more in the time frame to appreciate Dennis Leary because Bill Hicks was, at the point that I cared about stand-up, a founding father, right? Like he is a part of history. But look, there's obviously some undeniable similarities there. there's
this is from somebody who wore out my tape of No Cure for Cancer.
Yeah.
And somebody who wore out my.
I've been there live as you've sung "I'm an Asshole," so I understand that your affection for Dennis Leary comes from a very real place, which only lends you more credibility when you say, it straight up looks like he ripped off his act from Bill Hicks.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he likes to park in handicapped spaces while handicapped people make handicapped faces.
I'm an asshole. I'm an asshole. Oh, you.
I just wanted the line. It's such a good line.
I use public toilets and I piss on the seats. I walk around in the summertime saying, "How about this heat?" I'm an asshole. Yeah. It's no, but the thing is that the reason why Dennis Leary isn't someone to write off is, did he steal his act from Bill Hicks? Yes. Did he steal his jokes from Bill Hicks? No, he wrote his own material based upon this character and this concept. And, yes, he did all the same smoking jokes that fucking Hicks did. Hicks didn't invent the joke about being a smoker. They both did their things about smoking on stage and using the material and the I don't give a shit. The only thing that makes Bill Hicks edgier is it led to his death. And, and Leary got Leary once did a bit that has stuck with me forever, though, which is, something that that has stuck with me as a coda, which he does this thing where he talks about being married. And at the time he was married for 18 years and had kids, and he had never done that in his early material. And he mentioned his wife, and the only joke he ever made about his wife was the fact that, well, but we don't tell jokes about the wife because those are the rules. And that thing that has stuck with me, that is like, yes, you can do all the self-deprecating material you want. Your marriage is kind of off limits because that's a bed you got to crawl into. And it was really the first time I saw him as a human. And it was the type of material that you didn't see from Bill Hicks. And it was very much like, I'm not a comedian. I'm also this man who has this marriage and this life that isn't this.
Which that was the weirdest thing, because to go back to Louis C.K.'s first big couple like HBO specials are so much about his kids and so much about how him and his wife have an awful marriage, right? And he's like, so much of that material is there, and then they get a divorce, and he never talks about the divorce. Or he never talks about the ugly parts of the divorce. He talks about the good parts about divorce. One of my favorite jokes of all time is like, a marriage is fleeting, a divorce is forever. he has a solid divorce like oak. It gets stronger over time. That like him and his wife are friends now, and they were never friends when they were married. Now they can actually enjoy each other, that they have the gift of divorce, which is hilarious. But it's like, it's always weird to know, and specifically when you have a bit of a peek into the mind of a stand-up comic, if it's like, oh no, wait, like that is kind of like a sacrifice of your humanity for art on a level that isn't like, Brian, oh yeah, I got to be out on the road a bunch of weeks. Like, I'm going to be away from my family. I'm going to be away from my wife, but I'm out harvesting, and I come back and I bring food. It's like, there, it's like, all right, yeah, he's out and he's harvesting, but also it's like the thing he's doing is denigrating,
is
consuming
the life force of his marriage. Jeez.
Can I ask a weird side question?
Yeah.
Because this is something that's fucking with me.
Go.
Who is the picture over your shoulder, jury? Because it looks like Andy fucking Dick.
No, that is your friend and mine, one Mikey Newman, formerly head writer on Borderlands and Borderlands 2, and I assume whatever other Borderlands are in development, if any are. Now of movies with Mikey
God
/
knows,
Film Joy
not.
fame.
All I know is that from my view, it looks like you've got Andy Dick looking over your shoulder, and I can only imagine what Andy Dick's thinking about.
No. So Mikey is a regular on this show to do his quizzes, and they're devious and they're ridiculous and they're amazing. And he taunts you while he does it, because he is the only quiz master who is not a neutral third-party observer. He's actively trying to like gaslight you into wrong answers with his writing. But that was a moment in which he was taunting me, and there was a cupcake place in Iowa that wound up sending me and Brian a bunch of cupcakes so we could, like, I guess, help them pump up votes for some award they were looking to get. But this was the top of the cupcake case, was just staring me right in the face, was Mikey from the week before taunting me for being a shitty quiz answerer. And so I'm like, I mean, I can't do anything but put it right back there. So he's taunting me forever.
Looking like Andy Dick to the rest of us.
Looking like Andy Dick to the rest of us. That the unsaid predicate to that subject.
All right. So, how much more gas we got in the tank, gentlemen? Because I've been told 30 minutes ago that I have to go move the shelf elf.
I'm also starting to feel it.
I think it's time to wrap it up.
All right.
Alrighty. Hey, thank you everybody for a good show. Thank you,
hot
Cargo, for
damn.
coming out.
Yeah,
Hey,
dude.
wait, hold on, shit, Bryce, we
Thank you,
fucked up.
Bad Weave.
I know. Well,
Weren't you gonna do a thing?
we fucked up in the middle of the show, and it was at a point where I was like, oh, we'll just do it another time. We have like 3 more episodes anyway until then.
Sandwich Brad
you want to
says
like
the
give,
elf
give,
is
a, give a
dead.
super early?
I mean, we can do it. I already tweeted. I tweeted it out once I realized that it was way too late in the show to be effective.
Then just say it, and then that'll be the last thing we say.
Everybody, go to trendinglemon.com. Please subscribe to my new podcast, trendinglemon.com. First episode's coming out in a week or so, and then when that first one comes out, we're gonna put a bunch out at once.
Nice.
So,
And I'll tell you what, I have an episode. Brian has an episode. Jason Murphy has an episode.
Tom Merritt
Does
has an
Cargill have an episode yet?
No, Cargo. If you are interested in doing some BuzzFeed quizzes with me, we'd love to have you on.
Oh, not at all. I hate going on shows with people I like. It's a terrible thing to do. So
Yeah. What are you gonna force feed me whiskey?
Yeah, we got to set that up.
Yeah, definitely. So trendinglemon.com. It's already in. It's in most of the podcast directories except for Google Play because I had to reapply it there. But check it out. And then I don't know if we have any more streams coming up the rest of the week. Probably Rewind on the weekend. Maybe we'll try to make something work. Yeah. Anything else, guys? Before we...
Yeah.
Christmas episode next week, and the week after that, God knows if we'll stream it, but it will be recorded early.
Right. So, yes. Oh, fuck. This is the one we really should have gotten. bit.ly/18Santa. Send in letters. We did get a good...
Santa on a motherfucking cup.
We did get a bunch of good ones last week, so make sure you get them in ASAP.
Wait, you named something 1-8 Santa?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know you're like going for something like gangsta, but it sounds more like hustler porn. Like it's like you're dressing 18-year-old
Hey man,
girls up
dude,
as Santa.
blame the number of
18-year-old
years.
Santas.
I'll tell you,
Blame the number of years since Christ was born, man. If you want to take it up with somebody.
the real
Yeah.
the real story is like I needed to make a bit.ly for this, and I needed it to be short and easy to say, and everything else good was taken.
18-year-old Santas are looking to get their stocking stuffed.
All right.
BarelySanta.com.
Barely Santa.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Love you guys.
Bye.